Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome to episode 2 of Halloween Month. And today we will be talking about a much superior film, in my opinion, than the original. Though, surprisingly, I don't have that much nostalgia for this film. Today we will be discussing 1981's Halloween 2. And joining me today, of course, is TheUnagmer661 once again. Say hello.
How's it going, everyone? I'm ready for this one, honestly. I wasn't expecting yesterday to review Halloween Part 1 with you. It's just kind of a last-minute surprise. But, hey, I like doing that kind of stuff. Sometimes I do that on my own show. I'll do, random hangouts out of nowhere.
That's tame. But sadly, I just have water with me today, so I can't join the competition. So, Halloween 2, yes indeed. Released in 1981. John Carpenter. What?
The year I was born.
Oh, really? Go figure.
Yep.
Well, so Halloween 2 was not directed by John Carpenter, but instead Rick Rosenthal. This movie being his directorial debut. However, a lot of this movie was reshot with John Carpenter directing the reshoots. So I guess you could say Carpenter was a co-director of this movie. However, yeah. Carpenter did return to write and produce this movie along with Deborah Hill. And also a lot of the same cast and crew reprised their roles in this movie, specifically Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, and Donald Pleasance reprises his role, of course, as Dr. Loomis. Of course, this movie, being a sequel, had a much bigger budget compared to the first movie. This movie had a budget of $2.5 million. And while this movie wasn't nearly as successful as the first Halloween, this one only taking in $25.5 billion in its box office run. That's still a decent return investment.
Yeah.
However, this movie was...
a complete flop.
Huh?
At least it wasn't a complete flop where they didn't make their money back.
Yep. And unfortunately, well, not really unfortunately, but debatable among fans, some people say that this really should have been the last of the Halloween series because it wraps up the Michael Myers story. But I'll talk about that more when I get to Halloween 4. And also, interestingly enough, this was distributed by Universal Pictures. I think it's the only one to be distributed by Universal, actually.
Yeah.
So, what is your personal history with Halloween 2?
Halloween 2, honestly, it was immediately watched right after I finished watching Halloween 1, because after the cliffhanger ending of Part 1, and I'm thankful that how old I was when I saw it, because if I would have saw it when it first came out, I would have been just going crazy, wondering what's going to happen, if they're going to make a Part 2 or not, because it was a couple of years later, I think, because what was the first one?
First one was 78. This one was 81. So 3-year difference. Yeah, that's a good time. That's a good amount of time between sequels, if you ask me.
Yeah, and it's like waiting for 3 years would kind of drive me crazy. I do kind of have that, the Shenmue game, the Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2, and I waited for over a decade for the next Shenmue game to come out, what's going to happen for this one. But yeah, I'm thankful that I got to see the second one right away. I really liked the second one. I thought it was much better. It was done much better. Of course, you got to think about they had a better budget this time around, because the first one, they didn't have that budget like they did for the second one. The lighting was better. There's still some plot holes in the movie.
Yeah, there are. There's actually quite a few. And this movie isn't without its flaws.
Yeah, we might just play some plot hole spelunking. No, we'll just do that with Resident Evil.
Well, not really plot holes, but more continuity error, splunking. Anyway,
they're plot cavern.
So is that your overall opinion? Is that you do think that in some ways it's better than the first?
Yes, definitely. I like it a lot. I mean, I thought it was much better done than the first one in a lot of ways. But I also like the fact that they stuck to the original formula, and it picks up right where the first one left off. I like that one.
Very rare among sequels.
Yeah, it would have been really stupid and pointless for it to just wander off into something like, what the hell? Where did this come from? Kind of thing.
True.
Like it did with Halloween 3.
Well, there is a reason for that, but I'll talk about that when I get to Halloween 4.
Yeah. But anyways, I like that about the movie. The fact that, not many sequels will do that, unfortunately, and it's sad. Very few ones will do. And it was done right, I think, in my opinion.
For the most part. So,
and if this would have been the final movie, I would have been happy with it because it ended pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of like that they made other sequels, even though some of them are kind of bad.
Curse. 5. Yeah. So my initial history with Halloween 2, there's not really that much to say. I originally watched a lot of Halloween movies on YouTube. This was back in the day when YouTube was a lot less lenient on copyright laws, where people could upload a movie in parts, like each part was like 10 minutes long a piece.
I remember that one, yep.
So that's how I watched a lot of the original Halloween movies. I watched 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the remake in parts on YouTube. And this was, I think, the last of the original series that I saw on YouTube in parts. And at that time, I didn't really know exactly what to think of it. I just kind of thought it was meh. But then, that was the only time that I had ever saw the film. So it wasn't until I bought the original Halloween when I was 18 that I said, I'm going to buy the second Halloween film as well. So I bought Halloween 2, and it was this copy. And so I popped in Halloween 2, and I rewatched it again after probably about 6 years of not seeing it. And once again, I kind of just thought meh, but I did like it more than the first film. And over the years, I've just kind of let it sit with me and stew with me because, okay, Halloween 2, I think, is one of the top 3 Halloween movies that I've seen the least amount of times. Obviously, when I see Halloween 2018, that'll be the least amount just by default, but not counting 2018, I think this actually might be number 2. Because I've also seen Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 only once. I've seen this movie about 4 times. Give or take. And each time that I've seen the movie, are you going to review the Friday the 13th franchise? No. I am legitimately putting my foot down and saying, no, I am not reviewing the Friday the 13th franchise. I'd be talking about the same movie 8 movies in a row. Not even going to bother.
Oh, come on.
At best, I'll do a ranking of the Friday the 13th series video. Sorry. Not to mention, I don't think a lot of those movies are very good anyway. Anyway, so, like I said, the movie has kept getting better for me each time that I've watched it. And I actually just got done rewatching it for the 4th time. About an hour before we started doing this right now. I'm just going to date the hell out of this episode. And I got to say, I did really enjoy the film, although there was a few problems that did jump out to me. And I also have seen a lot of reviews for Halloween 2, and I've never seen anybody come out and say that they absolutely hate Halloween 2. The general consensus for Halloween 2 seems to be it's a good sequel. It's probably one of the best Halloween sequels out there, potentially the best Halloween sequel. Well, I don't 100% agree with that. I do think that Halloween 2 is a pretty good sequel. And in case you haven't noticed, I do enjoy Halloween 2 more than the first film. But that's just because I gave the original a 0 out of 10. Whereas my review for this movie will be much more positive. So anyway, with that being said,
which is good,
let's get into the plot of Halloween 2. So Halloween 2 literally picks up right where the last movie left off. On October 31st, 1978, Michael Myers is shot 6 times and he falls off a balcony, landing kerplank splat on the ground. Dr. Loomis rushes out to try to find him, but he finds his body gone, and which leads into the film's opening credits with the awesome Halloween 2 theme. Oh, so taking shelter to try to recover from his injuries, Michael steals a kitchen knife from the home of an elderly couple and then proceeds to kill a teenage girl that lives next door to the elderly couple. So Laurie Strode, of course, once again being played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who narrowly survived being killed by Michael, is taken to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and Dr. Loomis continues his pursuit of Michael with Sheriff Brackett. The two spot and chase after what they think to be Michael, but is actually a teenager named Ben Tramer, who just so happens to be dressed up similarly to Michael Myers, and is hit by an oncoming police car and crashes into a van, proceeding to explode. Of course, killing Ben in the process.
Sad, honestly.
So Sheriff Brackett then receives news of the death of his daughter Annie, and blaming Loomis for her death, Sheriff Brackett proceeds to go home and tell his wife about it, leaving Deputy Gary Hunt in charge to help Loomis out finding Michael. And at the hospital, a paramedic named Jimmy develops romantic feelings for Laurie, much to the chagrin of head nurse Virginia Alves. And Michael discovers Laurie's location via the radio due to the news of the murders reaching the media, and makes his way over to the hospital. And once there, he cuts the phone lines, disables all the cars, and kills the security guard, Mr. Garrett, when he goes downstairs to fix the power, killed by a claw hammer being smashed into his skull. Pretty gruesome death. Paramedic Bud Scarlatti is strangled, while Nurse Karen is scalded to death in the hospital's hydrotherapy tub after they get done fucking. And meanwhile, Janet hurries off to find Dr. Mixter, only to find him dead with a needle jammed into his eye. And before she can flee, Michael kills her with a syringe being jammed into her temple. Death scenes in this movie are pretty nasty.
Yeah.
Jimmy and Nurse Jill search the hospital for Laurie, who is trying to evade Michael. However, Jimmy finds Miss Alves' corpse, and when he goes to leave the room, he slips on a massive pool of blood that had collected on the floor, which I swear the actor must have really gotten a concussion from doing that. The sound that he made when he slipped and went thunk on the ground was sickening. And he, of course, loses consciousness, having to have at least 2 concussions.
Yeah, if that was stage or something like that, and they did a good job on that one. He did a good job of going, you know what I mean? Like,
that had to hurt so
my
bad.
natural instinct, if I slip, I'm going to try to catch myself as best as I can. But to let yourself fall and hit your head like that, I don't care if it's padded or not, you got to be dumb to do that.
Elsewhere, Loomis is informed that Michael had broken to the local elementary school And as he investigates, Marion Chambers returns with a U.S. Marshal along to come escort Loomis back to Smith's Grove on the governor's orders. And along the way, Marion tells Loomis that Lori is, in fact, of course, Michael's younger sister. However, that information was kept secret for her safety. She was born 2 years before he was committed, and 2 years after Michael was committed, Michael's parents died, and she was adopted by the Strodes. And with the realization that, of course, Michael is after Lori, Loomis orders the marshal to drive back to Haddonfield, back to the hospital. Just after finding Lori, Nurse Jill is killed by Michael, who impales her with a scalpel and lifts her high up into the air, which I'm pretty sure would not happen, but whatever.
Yeah, kind of impossible.
And after killing Jill, proceeds to chase Lori throughout the hospital. And Lori escapes into the parking lot and hides in Jimmy's car. But Jimmy, who regains consciousness, exits the hospital and gets in the car to seek help, but he once again falls unconscious on the steering wheel horn because of his 38 concussions that he got, which of course alerts Michael to their location. Loomis, Marion, and the marshal reach the hospital just in time to save Lori, and as Marion attempts to contact the police, the marshal is killed by Michael by having his throat slit and chases Loomis and Lori into an operating room. Michael ends up stabbing Loomis in the stomach, but Lori shoots out Michael's eyes, blinding him, and proceeds to go into one of the most cringe-worthy scenes that I have ever seen in a movie. Michael goes about covering his eyes and swinging the scalpel around, swinging out, and swinging, and swinging, and swinging, and swinging. It is very, 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 very cringeworthy.
Not bad to compare to other movies I've seen that has some cringeworthy moments. Watch Paul Blart 2, and you'll see a lot of cringeworthy moments.
No, thanks.
Yeah. Actually, that whole movie was cringe.
So Loomis and Lori Loomis and Lori end up filling the room with ether and oxygen gas, and Loomis, goddammit. Loomis orders Lori, they're both start with an L, shut up, orders her to run out and sacrifices himself by saying, "It's time, Michael." Flicks on a lighter, ignites the gas, which blows up the operating room with him and Michael inside, burning both of them to a cinder. Michael, engulfed in flames, stumbles out of the room, which is kind of reminiscent to The Thing. And a little bit of trivia, Dick Warlock, who played Michael in this movie, actually got burns from his flame suit because they had metal zippers inside the suit, and he got burns all over his arms because the heat was so intense. But the flames proved to be too much, and Michael falls dead, supposedly, burning to a crisp. The first time in his career that he has been undeniably and indisputably deceased. And next morning, Lori is put in an ambulance and driven to safety, having visions of Michael's burning body in her mind, as the film ends with Mr. Sandman playing over the credits. So what do you think of this? What do you think of this plot?
I don't know how Michael was able to tell that Lori was his sister. That was the one thing that really never I fully understand. Was it some sort of supernatural possession that was telling him inside his head, "This is your sister, kill her"? Also, why was he killing his sister?
Don't know. Well, that's explained in part 6. Poorly, but it is explained.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's better. At least it's something, though. But, yeah. But during those times, though, with part 4, part 2, part 1, and part 5, it's just never really never understood why he had this need to kill his family. And then part 6, yeah, it does explain it in part 6,
Poorly.
even though, yeah, but still, at least it made a little bit more sense to a degree. But yeah, then there's the plot hole for part 4, which you'll get to when you review that. But still, how the fuck did Michael and Loomis survive that goddamn explosion?
Who the hell knows?
It is impossible.
Well, wait, no, I know what. I know how. I'm going to quote Andy, the maniacal cinephile from Boots to Reboots. Money has magic healing powers.
True there.
Anyway, so my thoughts on this movie story, I really like it. It's a great continuation. I really like it when sequels have a strong continuity because you feel like, okay, this is the same movie, the same tone. The 3 years didn't even matter. I'm stepping from one movie and I'm literally just stepping into the other. And I really do wish that sequels had this kind of continuity where it literally picks up right where its predecessor left off. It's very rare when sequels do that, and that's one thing I will always praise about Halloween 2 is how well it picks up right where the first one left off.
Yeah.
Though some may say that's a problem. Huh?
I like the song at the end too. I thought it was fitting.
Yeah. Though some may say that's a problem because this movie takes place on the same exact night from the first film, that it doesn't really expand on the story that much. In some cases, they're right, because it's just, like to quote Dr. Wolfula, it's just more of the night that Michael came home. It doesn't really expand much more on the characters. It doesn't expand much more on the story. It does, but it also doesn't, in my opinion. There's not really that much that you can really expand upon, though what they managed to squeeze in, I think, is really good. Like the twist that Laurie is Michael's sister, which apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but John Carpenter came up with that idea during a moment of writer's block. So kudos there, I guess.
Yeah. Better improv than some writer's blocks I've seen, like Metallica's Saint Anger album. We call that one Saint Writer's Block.
So what are your pros with Halloween 2?
I like the better lighting. I like the fact that they, expanded on the first one, expanding the story to it, adding to it, and the fact that it picks up where the first one left off. I like the more gruesome death scenes in this one. I thought it was much better done than the first one. But I still like the first one for the most part. I don't know. There's so much right now. I'm just thinking. Now I'm going off the top of my head here. I don't really write shit down. So
you need to write shit down, damn it. Especially when we review Blade.
Oh god.
Well, my pros, you'll be much more pleased to hear I have 7 pros for Halloween 2. Pro number 1, the score is awesome. I love the music score for Halloween 2. I think this might be my favorite Halloween score of all time. It's much more synthesizer-y, which was an 80s thing, but I think it's a good 80s thing. I like the synthesizer score. It sounds a lot creepier, but it also sounds a lot more epic, and it sounds a lot more big in scale. Especially the opening Halloween theme. It is freaking spectacular. I love the score for Halloween 2. One of my favorite scores of all time for a horror film. Kid you not. Pro number 2 is Donald Pleasance is so much better in this movie than he was in the first film. He's acting a little bit more manic in this movie, kind of like how Anthony Hopkins portrayed Van Helsing in the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula. He comes off as being slightly mad, but I actually think that's what makes his performance a lot better, is that he's putting a lot more into his performance than he was in the first movie. In the first movie, he just kind of felt like he was just... He seemed like...
emotions.
Yeah, he seemed like he was almost kind of bored. Here, he actually seems like he's putting in a sincere effort into his performance, and I think it really shows. Donald Pleasance's acting is so much better in this film. It's not even funny. Pro number 3 is that the kills are so much better. For one thing, this movie has a larger body count, double than that of the original. There's 10 kills. My favorite kill is probably either the claw hammer to the skull or shoving the chick's face into the scalding hot water again and again and again and again. And then each time her face comes up, you see her face peeling off more and more and more and more. It's a gruesome sight. Another kill that's really good is when Michael grabs the nurse and jams a needle into her head. It certainly makes you cringe, and it makes you think, God, that's got to hurt. Though I will admit... Go ahead.
I have a fear of needles. I hate needles. So
I hate needles, too.
So that makes it a little more scary, too, I think.
Probably the worst kill, though, in my opinion, is... probably when the marshal gets killed, mainly just because it was an act of sheer stupidity. It's like, why would you get that close to a serial killer that we don't know for sure is dead? And then Michael just grabs him by the back of the head and slits his throat. I mean, the effect of his throat getting slit looks good, but it's just an act of sheer stupidity.
They always do that, though, in movies. There's always that one person that's got to do that stupid thing. Kick him. Yeah, he's dead. Nope, he's not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always stupid.
Yeah. It's just like that with any movie, though. You always got to have that one scene with that. Or another typical scene you see in scary movies is when they run to the car and the engine doesn't start.
Oh, I hate that cliche.
Thing.
God damn, I hate that cliche.
Yep. Or they have to run up the stairs instead of running out the door. It's always something.
Or they have to trip when they're being chased.
Yep, that's another cliche.
Hate that cliche. It's always in horror movies.
Yep.
Anyway, so yeah, the kills in this movie are much better than they were in its predecessor. Though a lot of people seem to say that it's a bad thing that the kills are much more violent because they say it's competing with the Friday the 13th films. And I have to disagree. I think it's a good thing that the kills are much more violent and the kills are much more frequent and there's a lot more TNA and there's a lot more bloodshed. Just makes the movie that much more interesting, if you ask me. Pro number 4 is that there are much better scares in this film. Now, this movie never really made me afraid to go to bed, but there were some moments in this movie that did freak me out. Admittedly, they were all kind of jump scares, but there was one aspect about this film that did creep me out. But the scares were a lot better, especially during the kills, because Michael would kind of just pop out of nowhere that you think he wouldn't be, then just kill a bitch. Like the first kill of the movie when he stabs the teenager at the beginning, he pops out of a spot that you don't think he would be. Then, and the music accentuates that. Pops out, stabs her in the chest, blood splatters all over her face. When the security guard is killed, closes the door. There's Michael. Bang! Gets him in the head with the hammer. The scares are a hell of a lot better in this movie. And in the best way, I think, is the hospital setting. And I'll get into that right now. I actually like the hospital setting. This being pro number 5. I think the hospital setting is a hell of a lot creepier than the setting in the predecessor, because it kind of gives me a bit of an alien vibe. It's a big place, but it's also a claustrophobic place, because you're kind of dealing with something that knows this area seemingly better than you do. He could be in any room, he could be behind any wall, he could be down any hallway. You never know where this thing is going to be at. And also, the hospital is darkly lit, giving it an eerie feel. What also accentuates this is that while the music is awesome, there's also a lot of moments where there's just nothing but dead silence. And I do agree that sometimes no music is better than some music. Because when there's no music, it can accentuate a creepy atmosphere. And in this movie, I think it does that well. So kudos to the filmmakers on that. Pro number 6, I already talked about this. I love the film's continuity. Has a great sense of continuity. I never noticed the comments. Yes, rip Ben Tramer. Yeah, there are some plot holes with how is this hospital as empty as it is? I mean, not to say that there's specific nights of the year where hospitals are empty, because they never usually are, but I've never seen a hospital that is this empty. I think Lori is the only patient in that entire hospital. That would never happen.
Yeah, that's true. There, I forgot about that one too, because like I've been to the hospital quite a few times. Every time I've gone there, it is packed.
Yeah. Yep.
When I sprained my back, oh, that hospital was packed. Like I think the emptiest I saw it was when I was finally discharged from the hospital. Was around freaking 4:00 in the morning. That's what time I finally got discharged from the hospital after I sprained my back. And as empty as it was, there was still a lot of people there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no.
But still, I think it was a creative decision on the filmmaker's part to have the hospital be as empty as it is, because it makes the movie that much more creepy. So I understand why it is the way it is, and I think it's better for it. But yeah, I do like the continuity. It's very rare for sequels to take place literally where the last movie left off. I wish Hollywood did this a lot more, but they don't. But yeah, I do like the continuity. It isn't 100% consistent, because you can tell that the actors are 3 years older. You can tell the budget is a little bit bigger, but still, it's pretty damn close. And finally, pro number 7 is that this movie has a great ending. The way that Michael is killed. Holy shit, is that one hell of an explosion.
And if it would have ended there, I think a lot of people would have been happy with it.
I think this movie would have had... I do agree. It would have been a very good ending to the series if it ended that way, because it's pretty hard to come back when you're an incinerated corpse, if you ask me. And granted, yes, that is one problem that Halloween 4 has, as much as I like Halloween 4. It does retcon the ending to this film, but I like Halloween 4, so I think it's...
Then again, the new Halloween coming up is kind of going to retcon.
Yeah, that's true. It ignores 2 through Halloween 2. Or Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So that's a...
Well, Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2 both fucking suck. So
I disagree.
But no, I mean, it's just like with the way that this Halloween's going to go, it's going to go to where it picks up where 2 left off where instead of Michael doing all the shit he did in part 4, part 5, part 6, and 7 and Resurrection, blah, 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 he's basically, they caught him, and then he was locked back up after part 2 when he got incinerated into the hospital. He was basically incarcerated and back in the insane asylum and everything for God only knows how many years. And then he somehow gets out. Now he's going back after his sister again.
Oh yeah, I'm aware.
But
anyway,
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
I am too. So I do like the ending to this movie. It's a great ending to the franchise. It would have been a great ending to the franchise, and it's a very exciting ending. And I also like the fact that it does pay tribute to the Thing, like seeing the Thing run out into the snow completely ablaze. It's a cool image, and seeing Michael walk out of the operating room completely coated in flames, it's a cool and creepy image.
Yeah.
So with that all being said, are there any problems with Halloween 2? Yes.
It's plot hole, definitely. And then now that once someone actually pointed that out with the fact that hospital was so empty, there's never been a hospital that empty where only one person is a patient. That is impossible.
Con number 1. Oh, wait, no. What are you want to talk about your cons first? So you already talked about the plot holes.
Yeah, also the fact that how the hell does Michael know that Laurie's his sister? Doesn't explain that one. Why does Michael want to kill his sister in that one? Still, you have to wait until part 6 to find out. Like, poorly, but still, it's something. But yeah.
15 years later.
Yeah. You gotta wait 15 years to find out why he's wanting to kill his family. Oh, God. So, some of the impossible death scene with the scalpel and electric, like, what was it? With the scalpel, right?
When she's impaled through the back with the scalpel, then Michael lifts her high into the air.
That is freaking impossible. That's another thing I kind of have a problem with.
Pretty sure the weight of her body would have just caused the scalpel to slice through her body, and then she would fall.
Yeah.
That actually would have been a better death.
I guess they weren't able to do that. Who knows? But yeah, those scalpels are sharp as hell. Those are surgical steel. And people want to talk shit about stainless steel. No, that's what they use for those scalpels is stainless steel. Sharp as hell, stainless steel. Stainless steel is good for knives, but not good for swords. I'll just say that much.
No, it is not good for swords. Yeah. So my cons with Halloween 2, this movie is not paced very well.
True.
And here's what I mean. I have 4 cons. The stuff with the hospital is paced very well, and that's the interesting stuff. Everything outside of the hospital is boring as shit. It feels completely shoved in and completely inconsequential to the film. And it also leads into con number 2, is that Samuel Loomis is focusing on the wrong things. He should be at the hospital, but instead he's focused on the Ben Tramer subplot, and he's also focused on the elementary school subplot, and it feels forced and pointless. This leads me to con number 3, is that the Ben Tramer subplot also feels forced. Why isn't Dr. Loomis at the hospital looking after Laurie? I don't like the Ben Tramer subplot. I actually think that's my biggest problem with this film is the subplots in this. It should just be entirely focused on the hospital and not these 2 pointless, boring subplots. It just makes the movie feel very imbalancedly paced. And that actually is an issue that many people have criticized with this film, stating that the movie is imbalanced. The movie isn't paced very well. And also, con number 4 is that the outside of Donald Pleasance, the human cast is very bland and boring. I actually hate to say this, but Jamie Lee Curtis is even worse in this movie than she was in the first film. For a good majority of the movie, she's restrained to her bed. She doesn't have very much dialogue. She doesn't show very much expression or emotion on her face. And when she does, she kind of looks like she's just kind of forcing it. And she finally doesn't do something very interesting until the last 10 minutes of the movie. Kind of that way in the first movie as well, but at least there was a lot more of that in the first film. And even there, she still had her moments where she looked like she was showing some emotion. Yes, I have to agree, Sean. Danielle Harris was a better lead in her first two films than Jamie Lee Curtis. And like I said, there's no disrespect towards Jamie Lee Curtis. She has proven that she can act, just not in these first two films. I hate to say that too. And even in The Fog, which came out the year prior, she's better there than she was here. So outside of Samuel Loomis, the rest of the cast, they're all boring. They're just there to be killed off. That's literally it. They're slasher movie fodder. But any other cons that you want to mention?
No, I can't think of any right now. I do wonder one thing though.
Okay.
Did they cover that dude's hospital bill for his CAT scan after he hit his head slipping on that fake blood?
God, I sure hope so.
Yeah, no kid. I was like, I would have gave that dude a bonus, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah,
dude, you took a hard hit to the head. Here's a little bonus. Not much, but at least pay for your CAT scan because that's gonna.
Yeah, no shit. So, what do you rate Halloween 2?
5 out of 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, mine is not a perfect score, but my rating for... Yeah, Bud was kind of funny. He had a couple funny lines. Specifically, I'm sorry. I guess you just fuck up all the time. After the nurse says to him, every other word you say is either hell or shit or damn. Sorry. I guess I just fuck up all the time. Well, Night of the Living Dead is playing in the background. Yeah, that was kind of funny. But other than that, I do think the rest of the cast, they're all kind of boring. They're just there to be killed off. But my rating for Halloween 2 is a solid 7 out of 10. It's a good sequel, though just by default, it is leaps and bounds better than its predecessor, in my opinion. It's got good kills. I love the continuity. The music is awesome. I like the scares. Overall, I think Halloween 2 is a pretty solid sequel and a very solid installment to this franchise. And thankfully, it gets even better with the next movie. So, post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Check out TheUnagmer661 channel. Turns out Fuckface Behind the Camera actually did follow up on his promise.
Yep.
Just a shame.
I actually did a video talking about it. And I'm going to be uploading it to YouTube today after I get done doing this. So, yeah.
It's just a shame that the video itself was boring as hell.
I knew it was going to be because he talked about it before. He said what it was going to be, and I was like, no one cares to see that shit. This is not what we wanted to see. When I was challenging him because of this, I was challenging him because he wasn't keeping true to his word of saying he was going to upload videos saying Angry Grandpa Show and everything else. He did for a little while, but then 3 months, he just stopped for 3 months, hadn't done shit, and just focused on his own little channel and was doing clickbait bullshit and fake drama to try and get attention. And I called him out on it. I've been challenging him to a fight ever since. And he's been avoiding me like I'm some sort of elephant in the room, thinking that, if I just avoid him and ignore him, he's just going to go away. No, motherfucker, I ain't going nowhere.
Alrighty, so yeah, and share this video with your friends. And look forward to, not tomorrow, unfortunately, because I have to work a long-ass shift tomorrow, but hopefully on Sunday, I can get out Halloween 4 from 1988. So, of course, and as always, go out. excuse me, go out and prove to everybody that a hospital is more occupied than the hospital in this movie, for Christ's sake. And also, don't slip on a pool of blood and give yourself 37,000 concussions.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
Nice.